What is up, everybody? I got another Q&A video, and somebody asked a pretty good question on the last video, which I'll have up here or the link in the description, or you can just find it on the channel. My market correlation video, why I don't use them. I had somebody ask a question on that. They asked, where do you get the news feed for non-scheduled type of news? I mean, if something unexpectedly hits the market, suddenly the president dies, suddenly Russia announces that it's going to expand on the war, or whatever. Where do you get to see that event quickly? Of course, we don't want to wait until someone writes an article about it. We want to know what happened 5 minutes ago. Of course, I see that the chart is behaving like something big happened, and I want to know, what is it? So is there a website or something that you can recommend? Thanks. Okay, so he asked about non-scheduled events. First, I want to share with you guys, in case you don't know, scheduled events, okay? So there is a free website called econoday.com. This is the U.S. news. So wherever you see the little red dot, that is most likely going to be something that will create movement in the ESE mini. And let's assume we're talking about the ESE mini because that's all I trade. These things with the little red dots is stuff you kind of want to look at. The CPI report. That came out today, and it came out at 8:30 Eastern. Well, that came out an hour before the market opened. There was a volatile move up when that did come out. And if you look at these reports, there's just basically a consensus number in it right here. So this is the consensus range. They're guesstimating that it'll come in between 0.6 to 1.4. It came in at 1.2, so it was on par there. Everything came within the consensus range, actually. So there's little things like this that are scheduled. It's good to know about when those are going to show up because there's going to be volatility in the market. Now, this petroleum status report, I know that's red, but it's not necessarily going to affect the ES. And most of these little red dots are before the market opens, so you know. Except for this industrial production right here, that's like, what is that? 15 minutes after? No, that's before the open as well. So you'll see FOMC on here, which comes at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's definitely going to cause some volatility. Be aware of that stuff. Because if you're getting into a trade and these numbers are about to hit, you could get stopped out, or you could be in a world of hurt if you don't use stops, which is not a good idea. Don't do that. So that's just scheduled stuff, so you know. And what's going to happen is the limits on your DOM are going to thin out right before these numbers, like a minute or two right before the numbers. You'll see that average bid offer start to thin out. And once those numbers hit, then the volume just starts chugging in. So if you ever see your DOM thinning out, check this so you know what might happen. So that is scheduled. And this viewer asked, where do you get the news feed for non-scheduled type of news? Okay. And he wants to know something unexpectedly hits the market. Maybe the president dies. So I'm going to give you something for free. Twitter is a great place. You can follow this guy, Walter Bloomberg, at Delta One. He gives out news, but some of it's fucking pointless. Bernard, hard to model financial effect of balance sheet rundown. Nobody gives a shit. Toyota plans 10% production cut in May on supply chain. Nobody gives a shit. Maybe if you're trading Toyota, you'd care about that. But that ain't going to fuck with the ES. So there's a lot of things that are not that great. But there's a lot of that he's given out. So just keep that in mind. You can set up a tweet deck to where you can run multiple news sources so that way you can always have it coming in. Or you can watch some sort of financial network and just have that running in the background if you're just wanting to trade some breaking news. But do you really want all that jargon in the background? Do you really want to hear all this talking? Because most of the time you're not going to have breaking news, right? And let's say that there is breaking news. Suddenly the president dies. Well, that will probably move the ES. But the thing is, as soon as it breaks, it's not something you want to just trade. You don't want to just trade breaking news, right? Oh, the president dies, so let's fucking short this thing, right? Hopefully I hope I'm not being audited for that, saying this stuff, right? I'm probably going to get fucking blacklisted because I'm reading comment. Whatever. So what could happen is, something happens, a tragedy like that. You just don't want to short the market. There might be a huge amount of volatility, and what you really need to do is just wait for your setup. The thing is, breaking news, in my opinion, isn't something you really just want to trade. What's going to happen is it's going to increase the volatility in the market, and if it's such a big deal, you need to wait for setups anyways. You need to be hitting specific areas that you know and want to trade, setups with edge. So unless you just randomly trade, which isn't good, if you're doing that, you need to develop more anyways. But just, in my opinion, hitting some breaking news event right when it happens and trying to have some sort of news feed that just is really fast, that's not going to be very beneficial. If I see some obscene amount of volatility come in and I'm in a trade, well, what I'm going to do is try to manage it. And if it's like really, really awkward volatility, like it's out of the normal, then I will go check something like maybe this Twitter feed and see if there's a breaking news. And now I know. Now that I have that information, what am I going to do with it? Again, I'm going to trade my setup. If there's a setup to take a long, well, I'll take a fucking long, even if it's tragedy, right? Now, the ES doesn't give a fuck about most petty news. He mentioned suddenly the president dies. Yeah, it'll probably care about that. Suddenly Russia announces that it's going to expand on the war or whatever. Maybe it seems that the ES got very skittish when the Ukraine stuff happened, the invasion initially. Yes, it's not going up. Yes, we're going sideways. Yes, there's still volatility. But that skittishness is not as extreme. But the market, that's the thing about the ES is it's weird. It tends to get over big deal stuff before the news does. Like it recovered COVID before COVID was even over, right? And the thing is, with something like COVID or the invasion in Ukraine, you can kind of see those events unfolding and happening. You can kind of expect it. The market starts to get slightly more skittish. It's starting to sell off a bit more. And stuff like that, that type of news is going to happen over the course of days, even weeks, months, such as COVID. So at that point, you're not just shorting the market to short the market. I mean, as a day trader, you're flat at the end of the day. So you're just coming into an environment where you have more volatility, if you will. And at that point, again, your setups, your approach, your techniques, that's what matters. Not necessarily the event. The event's going to give you the volatility to where you're going to change the approach, right? So, I mean, as far as like specifics, yeah, I kind of want to know, but I'm not going to take a trade based off of that. I'm just realize that there's going to be, again, more volatility in the market, most likely, right? And the ES doesn't care about a lot of petty stuff. So a lot of things you think the ES is going to freak out over, it doesn't care about. So you can look for something on Twitter, some sort of breaking news stuff on Twitter. You can watch news if you want, or, you know, there's a method I use, and I'm going to share that with you right now. So what you want to do is just go to finance.yahoo.com, and there's always an article, and they make these articles. Here, I'll move this down. They make these articles, they update them throughout the day and stuff. I want to look at it, you know, maybe at the end of the day. I don't always do this. So, stock market news, live update. Stocks reverse earlier gains to close lower with inflation data in focus. So what I want to do is I want to read these articles, and if I notice that they keep talking about the same thing over and over and over, then that is something I want to start to pay more attention to. And inflation is the big one right the fuck now. So there's a few big ones. The war in Ukraine. Obviously, this market is skittish, right? This market is skittish. That made it a bit more skittish, right? The inflation is definitely making it skittish as hell. That's been on investors' minds for a long time. They've been talking about this. It took them fucking forever to raise rates. They finally did it. Now people are freaking out about a recession. So what you can do is you read these articles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to highlight the parts that I think are important. So I'm going to cut the video real quick. Okay, guys, so I read through this. These articles aren't very long, and honestly, there's a lot of opinions in them, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. And again, it's something you want to continue to read on a daily basis. What is investors worried about? Okay, we as day traders aren't really investors. We're not, because this is a fucking job. Right? We're not investors. We're over here doing a skill-based job, managing risk and playing a game on a different level. So we're not investors, okay? We aren't. So what are investors giving a fuck about? Because they are your larger time frame players, and they can definitely interact with us and really make the market move. So the S&P 500, let's see, I'm just going to kind of read a little bit of this. So the S&P retreated to fall 0.3, and the Dow Jones gave up an intraday climb to cap trading roughly 90 points lower. Now, as an auction market theory guy, a lot of the down move did make sense to me. Sometimes they talk about how people are freaking out, but if you really learn auction market theory, some of these down moves make fucking sense. So, and these people that write these fucking articles have no idea. But anyways, so again, the CPI came out today, and like I showed you earlier, it was within consensus. So anyways, meanwhile, Treasury yield slightly retreated, but the benchmark 10-year yield remained above 2.7%. The highest level since January. Don't care. The moves follow an earlier bounce in stocks after some key elements in the Tuesday read on consumer price index. That CPI number I showed you on Econo Day up here, remember, it was in consensus. And this is a quote, while today's inflation print hit a 4-decade high, there was a sigh of relief as some components of core inflation weakened. And again, this is somebody's opinion. I highlighted this down here because I think this is more important. The red-hot print comes as investors grapple with the likelihood Fed officials will act more aggressively to combat inflation after a hawkish readout of minutes last week. So the FOMC minutes were last week. From the central bank's March meeting suggested many policymakers would have preferred a 50 basis point increase in benchmark interest rates last month. Investors are laser focused on what the Federal Reserve is going to do in its upcoming meeting. They always are. What they're going to do in their upcoming meeting, and it's looking like a 50 basis point hikes are more and more likely. And this is from Commonwealth Financial Network, yada, yada, yada. The market seems to be discounting 50 basis point hikes, and several members of the Fed have been pretty vocal about their desire to curb inflation. So this is what we want to do. If you have Jigsaw trading, there is something cool you probably don't know about. And if you don't have Jigsaw trading and you've been considering buying it, you can save $30 on it by using my affiliate link in the description. Use my coupon code, baby, and save yourself $30. If you don't have it, then, this doesn't apply to you, but watch it anyways. So, there is, well, fuck, that looks weird, doesn't it? Give me a second so I can fix everything. There we go. So, there, and you're not going to be able to see my face because of how everything's set up. Sorry. So there is something called real-time news. If you click on this widget, it will pop up. So let me erase everything. I said let me erase everything. There we go. Refresh it. So here's the thing. This real-time news, if you unmute this, it'll have a robot lady voice read to you, and it's fucking annoying. Look how much stuff came in at 4 o'clock. 4 things. DeSantis calls Democrats in D.C. hypocrites over COVID rules. I don't give a fuck. You know why I don't give a fuck? Because that's not going to move the ES. If the market was open. Obviously, this is after the market's open. Or closed. So, Biden on Brooklyn shooting. We're not letting up until we find the perpetrator. Okay, that's very sad and all that, but that's not necessarily going to move the market. Mexican truckers blockade border crossing over Texas inspection delays. None of this shit matters. So this thing is going to keep cranking out news to join Walmart that you frankly don't give a fuck. So things you can do is you can type in breaking, refresh it. So unfortunately, this is saying things like record-breaking comment. Well, maybe we need it to say breaking news. Refresh it. So if you're looking for breaking news, this might be a filter you can put in. And now I can put in keywords. And so we want to type in maybe inflation. So we'll type that in, refresh it. So there we go. Notice now how we don't have a bunch of stuff that came out at 4 o'clock. Yes, it's kind of putting out a lot of news. 3 ways to invest if inflation is here to stay. So it's not really doing a good job of filtering, but I could go ahead and type in maybe Federal Reserve instead. Filter that out. There we go. Don't expect clairvoyance from the Federal Reserve, Bloomberg. So you have to kind of really be picky and choosy about the words you're using. War. So put in war if you're concerned about the war in Ukraine, the war on abortion. So that's not what we're looking for. So type in maybe Ukraine war. So did I not spell that right? Ukraine war. There you go. So notice how it went from war on abortion to Ukraine war, and now that's all I'm getting. So you got to be really picky and choosy. You can go to more, and you can start to build this out and really fine-tune it. And what will happen is that'll update, and it'll hit you live time as something's coming out. And what you can do is you can click on this, and it'll actually send you to the different articles. So it looks like it's all this Benghazi stuff. Yeah. So let's assume we don't have filters, because it'll take you to different news sources. So like this one here, the Financial Express, where is this going to take us? The Guardian. And that's where it's just pulling BBC UK. So you can see this real-time news thing is pulling from different sites. So you can run filters. You can mute it or unmute it. Obviously, you're going to want to run filters, and you can just kind of shrink it and put it somewhere. and just have it up there. You can mute it again, unmute it, and it can talk to you, so you can have it off the screen if you wish. I feel if you're trading breaking news events, like, woman. That might be more of a stock-oriented thing, in my opinion. Like, for instance, several years ago, Toyota's gas pedals in some of their cars would just accelerate the vehicle, causing crashes. That's a problem. And if that's gaining traction, well, then if you're trading Toyota, yeah, you're going to want to care about breaking news such as that. Or if you're trading Boeing when they had that software issue that was causing some of their airliners to fucking crash into the ground, that's a problem. But as far as somebody who's trading the ES, who's a day trader, it doesn't really fucking matter. All that, and the news thing is a bit overhyped in my opinion, but that's a method of doing it. And again, that's a cool little feature of Jigsaw. Use my affiliate link. If you don't, and I know that little thing I just showed you with Jigsaw doesn't fucking help some of you. There's probably other services like that you're going to maybe end up paying money for. You're going to have to do research beyond that. But like I said, breaking news doesn't really fucking matter. If you notice volatility is increasing and it's out of the normal, go ahead. I just much rather go on Twitter and just look at one of these news services and see what they say. Maybe if the breaking news hits $16 million led by Tiger Global to turn virtual meetings into libraries. TechCrunch, like maybe there's an increase of volatility. Bank expected to report lackluster Q1 results. Suddenly, and it's not quite normal. Or the market just starts tanking, right? I'm going to go look at Twitter and see if something came out at 2:25 p.m. or right around there that caused the market to kick off. When there's breaking news, the market tends to move almost instantaneously. When Donald Trump was the president and we had the China trade wars, he would tweet something, and as soon as he would tweet it, the market would just all over itself. And by that time, it's too late to catch the move. It's almost as if algos are trading that news almost instantaneously. Our market makers are pulling their orders out. Not sure what's really going on that level. But all I can tell you is, do I have a setup here? The volatility is increasing. Okay, this is breaking news. If it's really bad, then this might be more of a short, right? If it's really fucking bad, like really, really bad, then yeah, we might want to be looking to short this on the downside. And if it's just cruising down, but I need to wait for specific areas, specific setups. So trying to have that instantaneous news source on tap doesn't help me in my trading lottery to where I'm really going to make these awesome trades based off
US dollar to Canadian dollar better bid
Those are my thoughts and opinions
and core
on
US CPI miss.
news.
What we know about the Brooklyn subway shooting suspect.
Hopefully that answers your question. Take it with a grain of salt, but just be aware of like what investors care about through the Yahoo Finance. Do they give a shit about rate hikes? You know what I mean? That's something you want to kind of be aware of. And what's going to happen is there's going to be an FOMC, and you know that's coming, and that's typically the Fed announces it officially, at least I think. So you know it's coming before it happens. So yeah, I could maybe filter out something for news on the Fed with inflation, but until they make an official announcement, the market's going to be kind of like skittish and not know what it wants to do until
Dow Jones
it's
futures.
Like, oh,
market
this is what
rally
the Fed
on inflation
said,
report.
so now we're
Fizzle
going to
says Fed sends this hawkish
take
signal.
that news
What to do
and
now?
either the
Biden
market
says
sells
Russia
off
is
because it
committing
didn't like
genocide
it, or
in
it goes
Ukraine.
up.
The first
and at
time
that
he has
point,
done
you
so.
kind of know it's
Kathy
coming.
Wood explains why she's been
because
selling
you're
Twitter
aware
amid Elon
by
Musk
using
board
your
drama.
scheduled
Morning
events with
Mail.
Econo
Liberal
Day
Senators
and
Melbourne
just
Cup
reading
travel
Yahoo
allowance.
Finance.
Boris Johnson fined.
And I don't look at that
Airport
shit every
chaos.
fucking day, the Yahoo Finance thing. So that's how not important it is to me in my fucking trading, because most of my trading has nothing to do with any of that shit. So, ease up on it. That's what I have to say. If you're strictly a news trader and you're trading specialized things like stocks, if earnings are really bad for Apple, well, fuck, maybe that's when you're going to want to really connect to it a little bit better. So anyways, guys, have a good one. If you didn't see the last video, go ahead and check it out, and we will see you in the next one.
Top Washington think tank